The encounter. Dr. Zelkor adjusted their breathing membranes as they entered the human's medical chamber. The alien doctor had seen many creatures in their years of practice, but humans were a mystery, even to their advanced medical science. The human patient, Captain Mark Daniels, lay unconscious on the sterile examination table, his chest rising and falling steadily. Zelkor's elongated fingers danced over a holographic screen, pulling up scans of Mark's body. "Fascinating," the doctor muttered, their voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Such a simple yet resilient structure. How does a species like this survive in the harshness of space?" The crew of the Erixus Prime, an intergalactic medical research ship, had rescued Mark from a drifting escape pod. His ship had been destroyed in an ambush by space raiders, leaving him as the sole survivor. His condition seemed stable, but there was an unusual signal in his bio-readings. Something out of place. Something alien. Zelkor leaned closer, their large, multifaceted eyes scanning the human's body. They noticed a small bulge beneath the thermal blanket covering Mark. It wasn't consistent with the rest of his anatomy. At first, Zelkor assumed it might be some kind of injury or implant, but further scans showed no signs of trauma or external devices. "What is this?" Zelkor whispered, their voice tinged with unease. The bulge was metallic on the scans, but emitted faint biological signals. Could it be alive? The doctor activated the ship's advanced diagnostic tools, sending a beam of light to analyze the object. The readings only deepened their confusion. The object seemed to pulse faintly, almost like a secondary heart, but its structure was entirely foreign. "Medical AI, analyze anomaly," Zelkor commanded. The soothing voice of the AI responded. "Analysis inconclusive. Object appears to be a hybrid of organic and synthetic materials. No match found in the galactic database." Zelkor straightened, their long neck stiffening. A hybrid of organic and synthetic. That was unheard of in most species, especially for a biological species like humans. Their culture and technology were primitive compared to most interstellar civilizations, yet this tool defied that notion. The doctor hesitated. Protocol dictated that they inform the captain of the discovery, but curiosity burned hotter. They had to know more. Gently, Zelkor reached out and pulled back the blanket. The mysterious object was now visible. It wasn't what they had expected. Not even close. Zelkor stared, their mind racing to comprehend what they were looking at. The object was smooth and metallic, but it was embedded seamlessly into the human skin, just above his abdomen. Tiny, glowing lines ran across its surface, pulsing faintly with energy. It looked like a piece of advanced technology, but its integration with Mark's body suggested it was far more than that. As they leaned closer, the object emitted a soft hum. Zelkor jerked back, their tendrils fluttering in alarm. Was it alive? Was it reacting to their presence? For a moment, the doctor considered summoning security, but they dismissed the idea. If this object was part of the human's body, they needed to approach with caution. "Fascinating," Zelkor muttered again. Their mind was a whirlwind of questions. Was this object something all humans possessed, or was Mark an anomaly? Could it be a weapon, hidden beneath the guise of biology? Or perhaps it was a piece of survival equipment, designed to activate in emergencies. Before they could delve further, Mark stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he let out a low groan. Zelkor froze. They hadn't expected him to wake up so soon. Mark's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharp and alert. He looked around the room, his gaze finally settling on Zelkor. For a moment, there was silence, a tension that filled the room like static electricity. "Where am I?" Mark's voice was hoarse but steady. He tried to sit up, but Zelkor placed a hand on his shoulder, gently pushing him back down. "You are aboard the Erixus Prime," the doctor said in their smooth, neutral tone. "You were rescued from an escape pod. Please remain still. You are under observation." Mark's brow furrowed. his gaze shifting to the holographic display hovering above him. Observation. For what? Zelkor hesitated. Should they tell him about the anomaly? Would he even understand? The doctor decided to tread carefully. Your body exhibits unusual traits. We are ensuring your recovery. Mark's lips twitched into a faint smile. Unusual traits, huh? You mean the implant? He gestured weakly towards his abdomen. Zelkor blinked, their eyes glimmering with surprise. Implant. This is normal for your kind. Not normal, Mark admitted, his voice gaining strength. But necessary. It's a survival implant. Standard issue for Earth's deep space explorers. Didn't think it'd freak you out. Zelkor stared at him, their mind reeling. A survival implant. This primitive species had created something so advanced, yet they used it as casually as a tool. It was both incredible and terrifying. As Mark lay back, closing his eyes to rest, Zelkor couldn't help but wonder, what else were humans hiding beneath their unassuming exterior? The investigation. Dr. Zelkor sat in their private research chamber, staring at the holographic projection of the mysterious implant. The readings on their screen defied all logic. It wasn't just an ordinary piece of technology. It was alive in ways that even the most advanced intergalactic devices were not. The glowing lines on the implant pulsed faintly, mimicking the rhythm of a heartbeat. Yet, its hybrid composition, part organic, part synthetic, was unlike anything they had ever encountered. This cannot be purely human engineering, Zelkor whispered, their tendrils quivering with excitement and unease. The ship's AI interrupted their thoughts. Doctor, patient's vitals have stabilized. No immediate signs of distress. However, the implant's energy fluctuations remain abnormal. Abnormal, Zelkor repeated, tapping the hologram to zoom in on the energy readings. Define abnormal. Energy output does not align with human metabolic patterns. The implant appears to be drawing power from an unknown source. Zelkor froze. The implications were staggering. Could this implant be self-sustaining? If so, how had a species as young and relatively primitive as humanity created such advanced technology? The doctor's species, the Trellith, had spent millennia perfecting medical science, yet even they had never dared to merge technology and biology so seamlessly. Determined to learn more, Zelkor initiated a series of non-invasive scans. The hologram shifted, showing the implant's internal structure in stunning detail. It was intricate, almost impossibly so. Tiny circuits wove through organic tissue, like roots entwining with soil. At the core was a glowing crystalline shard that pulsed with an energy Zelkor couldn't identify. Medical eye, Zelkor said, their voice firm. Run a cross-reference on this crystal's energy signature. Compare it to all known galactic databases. Processing, the eye replied. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the holographic projector. Moments later, the AI spoke again. No matches found. The energy source is unique. Zelkor leaned back in their chair, their mind racing. A unique energy source, that was unheard of. Every known civilization, even the ancient ones, had left traces of their technology in the galactic database. But this was something new. The doctor's thoughts were interrupted by a chime from their communicator. It was Captain Villarn, the ship's commander. Doctor, report to the bridge immediately. We need an update on the human. Zelkor sighed, closing the hologram with a wave of their hand. As they made their way to the bridge, their mind lingered on the implant. There was something deeply unsettling about it. Not just its technology, but its purpose. Why would humans need something so advanced for survival? What kind of dangers were they facing out in the void? On the bridge, Captain Villarn stood with their arms crossed, their expression stern. Doctor, I trust you have answers. Partial answers, Zelkor admitted. The human's implant is far beyond anything we've encountered before. It's a hybrid of organic and synthetic materials, powered by an unknown energy source. Vilarn raised a brow. Unknown. Are you suggesting this technology isn't human? Zelkor hesitated. I cannot say for certain. If it is human, it represents a leap in their capabilities that we were unaware of. If it isn't, well, that raises other questions. The captain's eyes narrowed. Such as where it came from, and why it was implanted in him, Zelkor replied. It's not a simple enhancement. This is a survival mechanism, designed for extreme conditions, but its complexity suggests it wasn't made for ordinary exploration. It was built for something far more dangerous. Vilarn's gaze hardened. Could it pose a threat to this ship? Unlikely, Zelkor said quickly. The implant appears to be self-contained. It's not transmitting or receiving signals, and there's no evidence of weaponization. The captain nodded but didn't look convinced. Keep monitoring him. If anything changes, I want to know immediately. Back in the medical bay, Zelkor found Mark awake and alert. He was sitting up, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and caution. When he noticed the doctor, he gave a small smile. Back for more questions, Doc. Zelkor ignored the informal tone, stepping closer. Your implant. You called it a survival mechanism. What exactly does it do? Mark tilted his head, considering the question. A little bit of everything. It monitors my vitals, boosts my immune system, repairs tissue damage. If I'm in a critical situation, it can even synthesize nutrients or oxygen. Basically, it keeps me alive when everything else wants me dead. Zelkor's tendrils twitched in astonishment. And your people created this? Mark hesitated, his gaze flickering. Not entirely. We found the tech, reverse engineered it, made it our own. Found it where? Zelkor pressed, their voice sharper than they intended. Mark's expression darkened. That's classified. Before Zelkor could respond, the lights in the room flickered. The ship's AI spoke urgently. Alert. Unidentified vessel approaching. Energy signature matches hostile classification. Zelkor's tendrils stiffened. A hostile vessel. And right after discovering the implant. Coincidence seemed unlikely. They turned to Mark, whose face had hardened into a grim mask. Looks like your day just got more interesting, Mark said, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Trust me, Doc. You're gonna want me on my feet for this one. The awakening. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Dr. Zelkor stood over Mark, observing the human with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The implant was no ordinary piece of technology, that much was clear. But Mark Daniels, this seemingly unremarkable earthling, carried it like it was just another tool in his arsenal. How could such a primitive species wield such advanced technology so casually? Mark's vitals were strong now, his body seemingly adjusting to the alien environment aboard the Erixus Prime. He stirred slightly, his fingers twitching, and then his eyelids fluttered open. Dr. Zelkor stepped back, instinctively wary of the unpredictable human. Ugh! Mark groaned, blinking as he tried to orient himself. His eyes scanned the sterile, unfamiliar room, settling on Zelkor. For a moment, he said nothing, his gaze measuring. Then he gave a faint, lopsided grin. Well, this isn't Kansas. Zelkor tilted their elongated head, confused by the reference. You are aboard the Erixus Prime, a Trelith medical research vessel. You were found adrift in an escape pod and brought here for treatment. Mark rubbed his eyes and groaned. Escape pod. Right. Guess that means my ship's toast. Correct. You were the only survivor, Zelkor said. Their tone was clinical, but their curiosity was evident. They couldn't help but glance at the faint glow of the implant beneath Mark's shirt. Mark noticed the look and chuckled. Ah, you found it, huh? Figured you would. Zelkor straightened, their voice firm. Your implant is unlike anything we've encountered before. Its structure, its energy source, none of it aligns with known human technology. What is it? Mark leaned back on the bed, his grin fading into a more serious expression. It's a survival implant. Pretty standard for deep space explorers. Keeps me alive in, let's say, less than ideal conditions. Standard? Zelkor echoed, their tendrils twitching in disbelief. A device this advanced is standard for your species. Mark shrugged. Well, it wasn't always. We, borrowed some ideas. Borrowed. Zelkor pressed. Explain. Mark hesitated, his eyes darting to the door as if expecting someone to burst in. When no one did, he sighed. It's not exactly a secret, but it's not something we advertise either. We found the tech on an abandoned alien ship a few decades back, reverse engineered it, made it compatible with human biology. Now it's part of the kit for anyone venturing beyond our solar system. Zelkor's mind raced. Reverse engineering alien technology was a feat that even advanced civilizations struggled with. How had humans, a species barely crawling into interstellar space, managed to achieve such a thing? You reverse engineered something this complex, Zelkor said, their tone a mix of awe and disbelief. How? Mark smirked. Trial and error. Mostly error. A lot of people died figuring it out. But once we cracked it, well, it changed the game. Zelkor's fascination deepened. And this implant, it connects to your body's systems seamlessly. Does it have limits? Mark's face darkened, and he looked away. Yeah, it's not a miracle worker. If the damage is too extensive, or if I'm exposed to something completely foreign, it can only do so much. It's a lifeline, not immortality. Before Zelkor could ask more, the ship's AI interrupted. Alert. Hostile vessel detected. ETA. 10 minutes. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Zelkor stiffened, their tendrils snapping upright in alarm. Mark, however, swung his legs over the side of the bed, his movements swift and deliberate. Hostile vessel? He asked, his voice calm but sharp. What kind of hostile? Zelkor hesitated. Unknown. The energy signature is not in our database. It could be pirates or a rival faction. Mark nodded, his mind already working. Do you have weapons on this ship? This is a medical vessel, Zelkor said. We are not equipped for combat. Mark muttered a curse under his breath and stood, wobbling slightly before catching himself. Zelkor reached out to steady him, but he waved them off. I'm fine. Just need a second. You're in no condition to fight, Zelkor said firmly. Good thing I don't plan to, Mark replied, pacing the room. But if these guys are coming for me, you're all in danger. We need to be ready. Zelkor stared at him, their minds struggling to keep up. Why would they be coming for you? Mark stopped and looked at them, his expression grim. Because of this. He tapped his chest, where the implant's faint glow was visible through his shirt. Whoever they are, they probably know about this tech. And trust me, they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Zelkor's tendrils quivered in alarm. You're saying they are here for your implant? Exactly, Mark said. And if they get their hands on it, they'll use it to wipe out anyone who stands in their way. The ship shook suddenly, the vibrations rattling the medical equipment. The AI's voice returned, louder this time. Hostile vessel has locked weapons on the Eryxis Prime. Incoming fire in 30 seconds. Mark turned to Zelkor, his eyes blazing with determination. Looks like we're out of time, Doc. You want to save your crew? Then you're gonna have to trust me. Before Zelkor could respond, the room's lights flickered, and the ship's shields hummed to life. The battle had begun. The cultural clash. The ship's alarms blared as the hostile vessel fired its first volley. The Eryxis Prime trembled violently, forcing Dr. Zelkor to brace themselves against a nearby console. Sparks flew from an overhead panel, and the medical bay lights dimmed, replaced by an eerie red glow. Mark Daniels moved with surprising agility for someone who had been unconscious just hours ago. He grabbed a nearby utility pack, rummaging through it like he knew exactly what he needed. Zelkor watched in disbelief as the human pulled out a compact rectangular device and began fiddling with its controls. "What are you doing?" Zelkor demanded, their voice rising above the blaring sirens. "Improvising," Mark replied without looking up. "If we're gonna make it out of this, we need to boost your ship's shields." Zelkor's tendrils twitched with irritation. "This is a medical vessel, not a warship. We are not equipped for combat." Mark snapped the device shut and looked at Zelkor, his eyes blazing with urgency. "Then we make do with what we have. Where's your main shield generator?" Zelkor hesitated. "On Deck 5, but it's locked down for safety. Only engineering staff are allowed." "Perfect," Mark interrupted, slinging the pack over his shoulder. "Take me there." Zelkor stared at him, torn between their duty to protect the ship and their growing unease about this human. "You are injured. You cannot." "I can, and I will," Mark said firmly. "Look, I get it. You think I'm some primitive meatbag who doesn't belong in your fancy spaceship, but right now, I'm the only one who can stop those guys out there from blowing us all to pieces." Zelkor's tendrils stiffened. "You assume much about our opinions of your species." "Am I wrong?" Mark challenged, raising an eyebrow. The silence between them was answer enough. Mark sighed and softened his tone. "Look, Doc, I don't care what you think of me or humans in general, but that ship out there wants what's in my chest. If they get it, they'll tear through every planet they find to get more. I can't let that happen, and I'm guessing you can't either." Zelkor hesitated, their multifaceted eyes narrowing. Humans were reckless, impulsive, and unpredictable. But they were also resilient, resourceful, and, much to Zelkor's surprise, selfless. Against their better judgment, they gestured toward the door. "Follow me." The journey to Deck 5 was chaotic. The Erixus Prime shook under constant fire, and injured crew members hurried through the corridors, their panic evident. Zelkor led Mark through the chaos, their long legs moving quickly while Mark kept pace behind them. "Your people don't seem used to combat," Mark observed. "We are a medical research species," Zelkor replied tersely. "Our focus is healing, not destruction." Mark snorted. "Admirable, but not very practical when someone's shooting at you." Zelkor ignored the comment. They reached the shield generator room, a heavily reinforced chamber with glowing blue energy conduits running along the walls. Zelkor pressed their hand against the biometric scanner, and the door slid open with a hiss. Mark whistled as he stepped inside. "Impressive setup. Way more advanced than anything we've got back home." Zelkor raised a brow. "For someone who claims humans are resourceful, you seem quick to praise alien technology." Mark grinned. "Hey, I call it like I see it. Doesn't mean we can't make it better." Before Zelkor could respond, Mark knelt by the shield generator's control panel. He pulled out the device he had taken earlier and began connecting it to the alien machinery. Sparks flew as he worked, and Zelkor's tendrils quivered with unease. "What are you doing?" they demanded. "Enhancing your shields," Mark said. "This thing," he held up the device, "is a field amplifier. It's not meant for something this big, but if I can sync it with your generator, it'll give you a fighting chance." Zelkor frowned. "And if it fails?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now," Mark said bluntly. "But it won't fail. Trust me." As Mark worked, Zelkor found themselves studying him. Despite the chaos around them, the human was calm and focused, his movements precise. He wasn't just improvising. He was innovating. It was a stark contrast to the Trellith way of doing things, which relied on meticulous planning and protocol. "You humans are unusual," Zelkor said, breaking the silence. Mark chuckled. "You're not the first alien to tell me that." "I mean it as an observation, not a compliment," Zelkor clarified. "You are reckless, impulsive, and prone to irrational decisions." Mark grinned. "And yet, here we are, saving your ship." Zelkor didn't have a response for that. Minutes later, The shield generator hummed to life, its energy output surging beyond normal parameters. Mark stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. There, that should buy us some time. Zelkor checked the readings, their eyes widening. The human's modifications had nearly doubled the shield's strength. It shouldn't have been possible, yet it was. Before they could comment, the ship's AI interrupted. Hostile vessel retreating. Shield integrity holding at 75%. Mark let out a breath of relief. Looks like it worked. Zelkor stared at him, a mix of awe and suspicion in their gaze. You just altered technology you barely understand and saved this ship. How? Mark shrugged. Like I said, Doc, humans are good at making things work, even when they shouldn't. As the alarms quieted and the tension eased, Zelkor realized something. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or biology. It was their ability to adapt, to take risks, and to survive against all odds. And in that moment, they couldn't decide whether that was inspiring or terrifying. The revelation. The Erixus Prime was quiet, save for the gentle hum of its engines as it drifted through the aftermath of battle. Though the hostile vessel had retreated, tension lingered like static in the air. The crew had sustained minimal damage, but questions about the human's mysterious implant loomed over every conversation. Dr. Zelkor, however, had no time for idle speculation. They had summoned Mark Daniels to the research lab to address the growing concerns. The implant's capabilities had gone far beyond anything they could have predicted, and it was clear that Mark's survival wasn't the only reason the hostile ship had attacked. Mark entered the lab, his steps confident but his expression wary. "Let me guess," he said as the door slid shut behind him. "You've got more questions about the implant." Zelkor gestured toward a seat near the central holographic table, where a detailed image of the implant floated in midair. "Sit," they said, their tone sharper than usual. "There are things we need to discuss." Mark raised an eyebrow, but complied, lowering himself into the chair. "All right, Doc. What's on your mind?" Zelkor's tendrils stiffened, a sign of their agitation. "This implant of yours," they began, pointing to the glowing hologram. "It is far more than a survival tool. During the battle, it interfaced with our shield generator. That is not a function you mentioned." Mark leaned back, crossing his arms. "That's because it's not supposed to do that. At least, not intentionally." Zelkor tilted their head, their multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Explain." Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "The implant has adaptive capabilities. It's designed to interact with foreign technology if it increases the odds of survival. Normally, that's limited to human-made systems, but apparently, it's more versatile than we thought." Zelkor frowned. "More versatile? Are you saying even your species does not fully understand its capabilities?" "Pretty much," Mark admitted with a shrug. "The tech we reverse-engineered was way ahead of us. We figured out enough to make it work, but there's still a lot we don't know." The admission stunned Zelkor. They had assumed the implant was a carefully engineered piece of technology, a testament to human ingenuity. But now it seemed more like a dangerous gamble, a tool humans wielded without fully grasping its potential consequences. "What is the source of its power?" Zelkor asked, their voice quieter now, tinged with unease. Mark hesitated. For the first time, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. "That's classified," he said finally. "Classified." Zelkor's tendrils twitched in frustration. "This ship and its crew risked their lives to protect you and this implant. I believe we are entitled to know the truth." Mark's jaw tightened. He stared at the hologram for a long moment before exhaling heavily. "All right," he said, "but you're not gonna like it." Mark leaned forward, his fingers tapping the edge of the holographic table as he spoke. "The core of the implant, the glowing crystal, it's not human. It's not even from this galaxy." Zelkor's eyes widened, their body tensing. "Not from this galaxy." Mark nodded. "We found it on a derelict alien ship orbiting a rogue planet. The ship's tech was dead, but the crystal was still active. It was generating energy on a scale we couldn't comprehend. Our scientists studied it for years before they figured out how to harness it. Zelkor's voice was barely above a whisper. "What is the crystal?" Mark hesitated again, then said, "We think it's a remnant of some ancient civilization, something old and powerful. Whoever built it knew things we can't even begin to understand. And you put this into your bodies?" Zelkor asked, their tone incredulous. "Without knowing its true nature." Mark shrugged. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Earth was on the brink of losing its place in the galactic community. We needed an edge. The implant gave us that. Zelkor stared at him, their mind racing. The crystal's energy, its ability to interface with alien technology, its seemingly limitless power. It all pointed to something far beyond human comprehension. Yet humanity, with their characteristic recklessness, had chosen to integrate it into their biology. "Do you realize how dangerous this is?" Zelkor said finally. "This technology could destabilize entire civilizations if it fell into the wrong hands." "Yeah," Mark said, his expression grim. "That's why I can't let anyone else have it." Before Zelkor could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. "Alert. Hostile energy signature detected. The enemy vessel has returned." Zelkor felt a cold wave of dread. "They are after the implant," they said. "They must have detected its energy during the battle." Mark stood, his face hardening. "Then we don't have much time. What's the plan, Doc?" Zelkor hesitated, torn between their duty as a healer and the responsibility of protecting their crew. Finally, they spoke. "We need to isolate the implant's energy signature. If we can mask it, they may lose interest." Mark nodded. "All right. How do we do that?" Zelkor gestured toward the holographic table. "I will need your cooperation. The implant must be temporarily deactivated." Mark froze, his jaw tightening. "Deactivated? You do realize that thing's keeping me alive, right?" "It is a calculated risk," Zelkor said. "But if we do nothing, the risk to everyone aboard this ship is far greater." Mark stared at them, his face a mixture of frustration and reluctant understanding. "Fine," he said finally. "But if this goes sideways, you'd better have a backup plan." Zelkor's tendrils twitched. "We will make it work. We must." As the hostile vessel closed in, the human and the alien worked side by side, their differences momentarily set aside. But beneath the surface, both knew the truth. The implant was more than just a tool. It was a weapon, a relic of a forgotten age, and it carried secrets that neither of them fully understood. And those secrets might very well be their undoing. The Alliance. The Erixus Prime shook under the pressure of the hostile vessel's renewed assault. Dr. Zelkor's tendrils quivered with tension as they watched Mark Daniels adjust the makeshift energy dampener they had built together to mask the implant's signal. The plan was daring, some would say reckless, but it was the only option to save the ship and its crew. The medical lab, usually a place of healing and quiet study, now buzzed with urgency. Alien devices hummed and sparked as Mark worked at a feverish pace, his brow glistening with sweat. Zelkor couldn't help but marvel at the human's focus. Despite the dire situation, Mark exuded a calm determination, a trait the doctor found both perplexing and oddly reassuring. "How's it coming?" Zelkor asked, their voice tight with worry. Mark didn't look up from the panel he was wiring. "Almost there. Just need to recalibrate the dampener to sync with the implant's frequency. Once it's active, it should cloak the signal long enough for us to figure out our next move." Zelkor tilted their head, their multifaceted eyes narrowing. "You speak of this as if it is a certainty. Yet the odds of success are low," Mark interrupted, finally glancing up. "Yeah, I know. But low odds are better than none." The doctor's tendrils twitched, their equivalent of a frustrated sigh. "Your species' penchant for taking risks borders on recklessness." Mark smirked. "It's called adaptability, Doc. You'd be surprised how often it works out." The ship's AI chimed in, its tone urgent. Hostile vessel preparing to deploy boarding parties. Estimated arrival. 5 minutes. Mark's face darkened. They're not giving up. No, Zelkor agreed. And they will not stop until they have what they came for. Your implant is too valuable. Mark set down his tools and straightened, his eyes meeting Zelkor's. Then we make sure they don't get it. Zelkor hesitated. What are you suggesting? Mark's expression hardened. We take the fight to them. The idea was so outlandish that Zelkor momentarily forgot their fear. Take the fight to them. You are proposing we board their ship. Exactly, Mark said. We use their aggression against them. If we can infiltrate their vessel and disable their command systems, we might be able to force a retreat. Zelkor stared at him in disbelief. You are one injured human. How do you intend to face an entire crew of hostile aliens? Mark grinned, tapping his chest where the implant's glow pulsed faintly through his shirt. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The plan came together faster than Zelkor expected, a testament to Mark's quick thinking and their own begrudging cooperation. Using the dampener to temporarily cloak the implant's signal, they concealed themselves in an escape pod rigged with a stealth field. The pod launched silently, drifting toward the enemy ship under the cover of its own cloaking technology. Inside the cramped pod, Zelkor watched Mark prepare for the mission. He checked his equipment, a compact energy blade and a small multi-tool, then glanced at Zelkor, who was armed only with a portable medical scanner. You sure about this, Doc? Mark asked. Once we're on that ship, things are gonna get messy. Zelkor's tendrils stiffened with resolve. As much as I detest violence, I cannot allow my crew to perish because of my inaction. I will do what is necessary. Mark gave a small nod, a flicker of respect crossing his face. All right then, let's do this. The enemy ship was a labyrinth of dark corridors and eerie red lighting. Mark and Zelkor moved silently, their presence masked by the dampener. The ship's architecture was angular and menacing, its design clearly optimized for war. As they crept through the corridors, the sound of alien voices echoed around them. What's their plan? Mark whispered, pressing himself against a wall. Zelkor activated their scanner, the device emitting a faint glow. They are searching for your implant. I detect increased energy readings in their central command center. That is likely where they are coordinating their efforts. Mark nodded. Then that's where we're headed. Reaching the command center was no easy feat. The pair avoided patrols, their movements precise and deliberate. Despite their differences, they worked in unspoken harmony. Mark's quick reflexes complemented by Zelkor's analytical mind. When they finally reached the command center, they found it heavily guarded. Mark studied the layout, formulating a plan. All right, he whispered. Here's how this works. I'll create a distraction, draw the guards away. You sneak in and disable their systems. Zelkor frowned. That is an unnecessarily dangerous plan. Mark grinned. Danger's kind of my thing. Before Zelkor could protest, Mark darted into view, drawing the guards' attention with a loud clatter. The alien soldiers turned, their weapons raised, as Mark bolted down the corridor. Shouts echoed as they pursued him, leaving the command center unguarded. Zelkor hesitated only briefly before slipping inside. The room was a chaotic swirl of holographic displays and glowing consoles. Using their scanner, they quickly identified the main control panel. With precise movements, they began overriding the ship's systems, their tendrils moving faster than they ever had. Outside, the sound of gunfire and shouts grew louder. Zelkor's heart, or its alien equivalent, pounded as they worked, aware that time was running out. Come on, they muttered. Finally, the console emitted a sharp beep, and the lights flickered. The ship's systems went offline, its engines powering down. The hostile vessel drifted, incapacitated. Mark stumbled into the room moments later, breathing hard and sporting a fresh burn on his shoulder. You did it, he asked, his voice laced with exhaustion. Zelkor nodded. The ship is disabled. They are vulnerable. Mark grinned despite his injuries. Told you we'd make a good team. Back on the Eryxis Prime, the crew watched as the hostile vessel was forced to retreat, its systems too damaged to continue the fight. Mark and Zelkor returned to a hero's welcome, though both were too exhausted to enjoy it. In the aftermath, Zelkor found themselves reflecting on the mission. For all their skepticism about humans, Mark Daniels had proven to be more than just a reckless primitive. He was resourceful, courageous, and most surprising of all, willing to risk everything for the lives of others. Perhaps humanity wasn't so primitive after all. The resolution. The Eryxis Prime floated in the vast expanse of space, the aftermath of the battle finally behind them. The hostile vessel had limped away, unable to continue its pursuit, and the crew was now hard at work repairing the ship. Yet, despite the relative calm, a heavy tension lingered in the medical bay where Mark Daniels and Dr. Zelkor stood, facing the reality of what they had uncovered. Mark sat on the examination table, his arm wrapped in a bioregenerative bandage. He looked tired but satisfied, the faint glow of his implant pulsing rhythmically beneath his shirt. Across from him, Zelkor stood near a holographic display of the implant, their tendrils twitching with barely contained curiosity and concern. "You pulled it off," Zelkor said, their voice measured. "The enemy retreated. The ship is safe, but the cost of this victory is greater than you seem to realize." Mark leaned back, exhaling heavily. "We're alive. That's what matters." Zelkor's eyes narrowed. "For now. But the threat is far from over. Your implant signal may be cloaked, but it is only a matter of time before someone else comes looking for it. And when they do, the consequences could be catastrophic." Mark met their gaze, his expression unreadable. "You think I don't know that?" Zelkor hesitated. Despite their frustration, they couldn't deny the weight in Mark's voice. He wasn't ignorant of the risks. He had simply accepted them as the price of survival. The door to the medical bay slid open, and Captain Villarn entered, their expression stern. "Doctor, human, we need to talk." Mark smirked. "Well, that's a warm greeting." Villarn ignored the comment, their focus on Zelkor. "The crew is unsettled. They know something unusual occurred during the battle. Rumors are spreading about the human's implant and its capabilities." Zelkor nodded. "Understandable. The implant's actions were unprecedented." "That's an understatement," Villarn said. "This ship has protocols for dealing with dangerous technology. If we cannot ensure the implant's safety, I will have no choice but to turn the human over to a neutral galactic authority." Mark tensed, his eyes narrowing. "Turn me over. Like hell you will." "Enough," Zelkor interjected, their tone sharp. "Captain, I believe I have a solution." Both Mark and Villarn turned to look at Zelkor, who gestured toward the holographic display. "The implant's energy source is its greatest asset, and its greatest liability. However, if we can neutralize its ability to broadcast a signal entirely, we may remove the risk of it being tracked." Mark frowned. "Neutralize? You mean shut it down?" "Not permanently," Zelkor clarified. "The implant would remain functional, but its unique energy signature would be masked indefinitely. It would be as if it does not exist." Mark hesitated, his hand unconsciously moving to his chest. "And what happens if I'm in another life-or-death situation? Will it still work?" Zelkor nodded. "Yes, its core functions will remain intact. Only its external signals will be suppressed." Mark looked skeptical. "And what's the catch?" "The procedure is experimental," Zelkor admitted. "There is a small risk of complications, but given the alternative—" "I get it," Mark said, cutting them off. He stood, rolling his shoulders. "All right, Doc. Let's do it." The procedure was delicate and complex, requiring both Zelkor's medical expertise and Mark's cooperation. The implant's crystalline core had to be accessed and recalibrated without triggering a defensive response. Zell-Kor worked methodically, their long fingers moving with precision as Mark lay on the table, his body tense but still. "This is the part where you tell me everything's going to be fine," Mark said, his voice tinged with nervous humor. Zell-Kor glanced at him. "Humans seem to find comfort in false assurances. I prefer honesty." Mark chuckled, despite the situation. "Fair enough." As Zell-Kor made the final adjustments, the implant emitted a soft hum, its glow dimming until it was barely visible. The ship's scanners, which had been monitoring the procedure, confirmed the change. "It is done," Zell-Kor said, stepping back. "The implant signal is fully masked." Mark sat up slowly, testing his movements. "Feels the same." "Good," Zell-Kor said. "That means the recalibration was successful." Vilarn, who had been observing from the corner of the room, nodded in approval. "This should put the crew at ease, for now." Later, Mark and Zell-Kor stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars drift past. The tension between them had softened, replaced by a quiet camaraderie. "So," Mark said, breaking the silence, "what do you think of humans now?" Zell-Kor considered the question carefully. "You are unpredictable, impulsive, and often reckless." Mark smirked. "Don't hold back, Doc." "But," Zell-Kor continued, "you are also resourceful, resilient, and willing to sacrifice for others. It is admirable." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "An observation," Zell-Kor said, though there was a hint of warmth in their tone. "Your species has much to learn, but you also have much to teach." Mark looked out at the stars, his expression thoughtful. "Same goes for you. Maybe this whole galaxy thing will work out after all." As they stood in silence, the faint glow of Mark's implant reflected in the observation window, a reminder of the challenges ahead and the unlikely bond that had formed between a human and an alien doctor. Together, they had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, proving that even the most unlikely alliances could shape the future.